Okay, it is 2:01, so why don't we go ahead and get started? My name is Ron Gorman. I'm the superintendent here at Kent ISD. Before we get started, could you just make sure that you're all muted so we don't have any background sound? We would appreciate that. This is our annual meeting that where we share the My Student Voice results for the year. So we are going to take some time today, my colleagues and I. So again, I said Ron Gorman. I'll walk you through the journey of the My Student Voice survey. And then what Dr. Davey Storr is going to do is share some reports with you. And he is also going to share with you how to interpret those reports. Jen Rotash is going to share with you our statewide results. And again, you're not going to have individualized results today. These will be your statewide results. And then Dr. Jenny Fee, she will share with you how to put this work into action. So just a little walk down memory lane. As you may be aware, in 2019, a group of Kent County superintendents came together to create a student survey because they were sick and tired of a test score on one day determining what student success looked like, and they really wanted to hear what students' opinions were like in the county as it relates to the areas that we're focusing on with our survey. In 2021, there was some pilot testing, so we started out with 13 schools. You can see that nothing was done in 2020 for many reasons that I don't have to recap. In year one, you can see that we grew from 13 to 22 school districts across the state participating. And then in year two in 2023, there was a significant jump with 58 school districts across the state participating in the survey. Year three, we got over the 100 school district threshold. So that was a wonderful year for our survey. And we also pilot tested the educator and parent and guardian surveys at that time because those were requested from our constituent districts. Year four, we jumped up again to 127 districts. And as I always share with our team, we're not going backwards. There was a compliance component to the survey this year. And quite frankly, there were some districts that did not want to participate because they were concerned about the compliance and also some statewide penalties for not putting your survey data out there the correct way. So as you can see in year five, we created some additional reports to really help districts with that compliance piece. And so even though we had some challenges, we had a compliance challenge, we lost our funding. We were getting about $500,000 to pull this off. With a small crew, we were still able to get 119 surveys out there at the state level. All right, so if you take a look at the participation, we have a tremendous amount of representation across the state. So we have 117 districts across the state that are participating. That's 88,000 approximately student voices across the state. If you look at the educator perception survey, we have 95 districts with 7,507 educator voices. And if we look at the parent guardian perception survey, we have 95 districts with 16,592 parent or guardian voices. So as you can see, we have some significant numbers at the student survey level, educator level, and at the parent and guardian perception survey level, all of which is free of charge to everyone in the state. We know there are some expensive products out there. We think we have a wonderful product for Michigan. And even with the hurdles that we faced this year with some short staffing and some compliance issues that we had to deal with, we still had significant survey participation in all three areas this year. At this time, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Davey Storr. He's going to talk to you about reading the reports. Dr. Storr?
Thank you, Dr. Gorman. And so what we do is every time when you administer these surveys, a week after that, we always give you these reports. And the reports are divided into two categories. There is the domain level report, and the domain level report is really a summary of all the results that you are having in there. So for the student perception surveys, we do have the social-emotional learning domain, we do have the belonging domain, and we also have the student engagement domain. And what we do in the domain level report is not to share with you the actual questions, but to share with you the higher level information that you could use. And we also give you the question level report. And what the question level reports do is to give you drilled level information, like really information that will help you to make actions out of that data. And so when you look at those two reports, you get the detailed information when you go to the question level report. But we also make sure that these reports are actually provided at a building level and also at a district level. And so how do these reports really look like? What you notice here is in these reports, they are actually filled with bars. So these are bar charts, but those bar charts are divided into 5 sections. I would like to think of these sections as buckets that are collecting information. And what I call them, usually I just call them buckets that can stretch and can shrink at the same time. And so what you're trying to do in these buckets is we have 5 response categories, starting from not at all, which is coded as 1, and the high end is extremely or almost always. And what you're trying to do with that is we could do 2 things with it. The first thing we do is we have the average. So we can average ones, how many ones or how many fives, fours, those responses. And that's why you see that number 3.24 as the average of those responses. At the same time, you can have the percent positive, and the percent positive is really, as you can see on the next slide, is a combination of the greens. And so it's 27 plus 18 there is the positive responses. Those that are answering almost always or extremely or often or quite. How many are those? Like what percent of responses are answering like that? And so we tend to focus on that green side of things because that's where it shows you the positive responses. However, I remember back then when we started having these conversations, um, our chief advocate on the service, Superintendent Ron Keller, used to say, you can land an Airbus 99.99% of the time, but there will be no story there. But the moment you fail to land one, that's where there will be a story. And what he was trying to say is we can focus on this positive green side, but we also have to pay attention on the other side of the path. And so if you look on the next slide, um, what you will see is you are seeing the blue side that is shrinking. We're having 7% and 10% on the blue side, leading you to 17%. Whereas when you look at the green side, it is actually expanding. In that sense, we have about 58.7% of the positives. So the story is we should not only focus on the green side, we should also focus on that blue side because it tells you a story. After all, we live in Michigan where we have blue and green side. So we have to focus on both. Just like the next slide is going to show you, and this is a good example on why we need to focus on both sides. You see that the green side there is expanded, is a side where the blue side has actually shrank, right? It's shrinking side there. You have 1% and 3% on the blue. Uh, this tells us that we are actually having favorable outcomes for this question. Are resources at your school shared fairly across all students? Having 81.6% is actually a very good outcome. Whereas on the other side, when you look at that bar chart just below the one that has 81.6%, you see that the green in this time now has shrunk, and you are only having about 35% of favorable outcomes. This is the time when you tend to go and look at the other side just to see what's happening there. Whenever you're having 14 plus 24, 38%, showing you negative responses like that, where it's almost never or rarely, you have to pay attention and see what needs to be fixed there. So on the next slide, what we are going to share with you is the fact that when you're looking at this data, it's really interesting because you are talking about, in this data, we're talking about consortium. Now, the consortium is everybody who took this survey. Now, when you're looking at this, the average usually kind of distorts the whole story. In fact, Todd Ross, a researcher from Harvard University, wrote a book called The End of the Average, which really is trying to say that the average does not tell the whole story. What is so important here is for you to go and look at your own reports because that is where the real stories lie. When you look at those district reports, when you look at the building level reports, this is where you have the story because the average is just really the middle, right? And so we don't really get to get the fun part of this, but the fun part is actually in the building. The other thing that I also wanted just to share before I let Jane Rota share with you the important highlight is that when you are looking at your reports, one key question that you need to ask yourself is, how is my data really aligning with the students that I have in my building or in the district? Let's say, for example, you have 59% of your students in your building are white. You have to make sure that on the survey responses too, the percentages kind of like add up to that same amount. If you have 59% white and on your surveys you're on or you're having 80% of your students responding white, then those are like sort of like different. And it makes it so difficult for you to draw conclusions. So what you will see in the consortium report is that we do tend to oversample. And what I mean by that is, for example, in Michigan schools right now, 9% of students are Hispanic students. But then when you look at our sample, the survey here, we are having about 13% of those students answering to this survey. That is good because what it is doing, it is making us get information from students who otherwise were not able to be here from them. So it is good that we are oversampling in many ways, but I think I will leave that to you too when you are interpreting your data, just to make sure that those numbers, those proportions of people taking the survey are actually somehow equivalent or at least adequate to the sample that you will have for the students that enroll in your district. So I will pass it over to Jane Rotach to really share the key ingredients or the key findings from this survey this year.
Oh, hello. My name is Jen Rotach, and I'm the Senior Research and Data Analyst at Kent ISD. You probably recognize my name because I've been one of your technical advisors across the last few years. So today I'll be walking us through what information we gathered through the student, educator, and parent guardian surveys. So we'll start off with the student survey. As we know, the student survey has 3 domains. The highest rated domain was belonging. Following trends from last year, students highlighted that they were given equal opportunities for success regardless of background, and that adults demonstrated fairness towards everyone. Student engagement was the second highest rated domain. So similar to last year as well, a majority of students reported feeling encouraged by their teachers to do their best. They expressed that they are putting effort into learning at school, trying to remain engaged. A strong theme that came through in the social emotional learning domain, both in 2025 and in 2026, was the importance our students placed on caring about each other's feelings. They also expressed that they are respectful of each other's point of view, even if they don't always agree. So as we examine the data, we also saw areas that give us opportunities for growth. This year, students are struggling the most with social emotional learning. Survey responses suggest that students would benefit from additional support in understanding their emotions, understanding one another, and developing stronger connections with their peers. Within our engagement domain, we still see that there is room to expand those teacher-facilitated conversations around how students' actions impact others, as well as ways to work through conflict constructively. However, those results are highly dependent upon grade level, where our younger students are more apt to receive those conversations compared to our older students. So one question that had a lower average despite grade level gave us insights into students seeking more awareness and understanding from their teachers when they are under emotional distress. Though belonging was the highest scoring among these three domains, there were a few areas that stuck out. Both in 2025 and in 2026, students are sharing a dissatisfaction around discipline in their schools. They report that while adults treat everyone fairly, they don't see students doing the same. The environment has not been as conducive to students trying to do their best as it has been in past years. So this year we saw a small dip in our belonging and social emotional learning scores. Our analysis showed that the change in belonging was strongly associated with the newer districts that participated, but not the change in social emotional learning. So we're still investigating what the cause of this is. But so far, our analysis is showing that there are three questions driving this decline. One, when you're upset, do you take time to figure out what you're really feeling? Two, do people in your school understand you as a person? And three, do you feel connected to the students at your school? We highly recommend looking at these questions in your own results to see how significantly they may be impacting your district. So now we'll move on to some insights we gathered on the educator survey. We had 7,507 educator voices driving our data this year. The three highest domains on the educator survey were relationships and school culture, belonging, and school satisfaction. 2 years in a row, educators shared that they were experiencing strong, respectful relationships with their colleagues. They overwhelmingly said that they provide positive learning experiences to all their students from varying backgrounds and felt that the school provides equal opportunities for their students to succeed. Educators reported feeling connected to their students and in general felt that the school was a safe environment. Beyond our achievements and celebrations, the data also suggests areas where we can continue to improve. There were several items causing a disconnect between staff and district leadership. District leadership could provide more opportunities for feedback and dialogue, as well as relevant professional development. Educators have indicated a strong desire for more support with behavior and discipline. This is mirrored when we look at the disconnect between staff and school leadership. Educators reported needing more support from their school leadership with behavior and discipline, in addition to needing more relevant professional development. In our respect and support domain, we saw that 2 years in a row, there continues to be an opportunity to deepen collaboration between educators and families to support student learning. New this year, we're going to talk about the open-ended response at the end of the educator and parent guardian surveys, which asked for any additional feedback. There were 2,168 educators who responded to this question. Each response was reviewed and grouped into common themes or topics to help districts better understand the overall feedback they received. So each response could and most likely had multiple themes. Overall, 29%, so 620 comments, brought up discipline and behavior. 20% of responses were related to support, whether it be positive that they were receiving it or negative that they needed more of it. 19% of replies related to a disconnect between staff and leadership. 16% of responses talked primarily about their leadership. 12% talked about communication and 11% referenced accountability, while another 11% talked about respect. These were the biggest themes that educators highlighted this year. So let's now explore what we learned from the parent guardian survey results. We heard the voices of 16,592 parents and guardians in this survey administration. So these parents shared that they feel respected by staff and note that staff are also respectful to their children. They overwhelmingly supported their children attending school every day, with 93% of parents having a positive response to this question. In addition, parents highlighted how helpful it was for students to have open conversations about differences in backgrounds at school. They felt positively that adults at the schools treat people from all backgrounds fairly. As before, in addition to what's going well, the data pointed us to opportunities to make progress. Parents reported that there was room for improvement when it came to communication between them and the school, and also how discipline is handled within the school. They felt that there was a need to strengthen their child's enthusiasm for coming to school and having the motivation to learn when they get there. Our parents and guardians expressed that while adults were successful at this, there is room for growth in helping students promote inclusivity, fairness, and respect for individuals from diverse backgrounds and perspectives. So let's now take a moment to review the most talked about themes in the feedback question on the parent guardian survey. There were 5,643 responses that we read and categorized. Remember, each response could and more than likely had multiple themes associated with it. 16% of responses, 899 comments, referenced communication between the school and parents. 14% or 793 comments talked about the quality of teachers that their children had, whether it be positive or negative. 13% referenced a general positive experience. These were typically responses like, "This is a great school," or "Keep up the good work." 11% of parents and guardians referenced discipline in their responses, and another 11% referenced leadership in some way. 9% spoke about safety concerns in the schools, while 8%, which is 433 comments, talked about bullying or harassment experienced by their children. These were the most popular themes for the parents and guardians to bring up across the state. So I will now pass this back over to Dr. Davy Storr, who will talk about how we can extract insights from the combination of all three surveys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jen. And so what we're trying to do now is to tell you the story that comes from all three surveys. And I think one of the key features that we provided last year was the anchor item report. And anchor item reports are reports that are showing you how, when you ask questions, same questions to parents, students, and educators, what they will tell you. It's really interesting when you ask these questions, you tend to find really interesting insights from them. One of the key questions that we have asked as our anchor item was, do adults at your school treat people from all backgrounds fairly? And I think Jane pointed out in the insights that she has just shared that that was really enlightening to hear that a lot of our responses that we're having there were high. Now, when you look at responses that are having an average of like over 4, like what we are seeing here, or around 4 or above 4, those are like high scores. Now, what is tending to happen here is students, parents, and educators, they all equally feel that, yes, adults at schools are treating people from all backgrounds fairly. What that right graphic is showing you is that about 8 in 10 respondents are actually saying that, yes, they see that happening. And so this is where the positives are happening. Like having over 8 out of 10 or 8 in 10 people responding that way, that is really, really high. And we feel that like 2 years in a row, this question has continued to show really progress in this sense. So this is really good news to get from those anchor item reports. The same thing we did with the next slide. We are seeing that there is also areas where we need to look into. And the question is, are you satisfied with how student discipline is handled at your school? This is a question that is asked to students, parents, and even the educators. And as we can see over there, 3.23 for students, 3.52 for parents, and it's really in the threes there. This is low, but I think what is more telling is when you look at the right side, that graphic there tells you a lot. It is telling you that about 4 or about 5 in 10 are actually responding positively on this one. Now, this is where now you can go back and revisit the example I shared with you where we talked about landing an Airbus. Think about the other side. If 4 in 5 are responding positively, it means on the other side too, 5 are responding negatively, 5 in 10. Those are really numbers that we need to consider. But what I like about these anchor reports is that they kind of like give you a story. They tell you a story from different lens. Like how is a student viewing the same information and how are parents or guardians viewing that information. In many reports that I have looked at, it actually shows that students are the ones that are having the lower averages in general, whereas parents are stuck kind of in the middle, and then the educators have high perceptions of whatever we're measuring. It is actually a very good thing. I encourage you to look at this anchor item report if you have administered all those 3 surveys or even 2 surveys, just to see what that information says. For me, this is really at the heart of school improvement plans. I think you can actually see how the same information is being viewed from different perspectives. At this point in time, I will pass it over to Dr. Jennifer just to share with you on how districts have used this data to be actionable. Dr. Fee.
As we know, gathering the data is just one piece of the puzzle for districts. Just having the data on the shelf isn't going to move student outcomes further or make our districts more effective. And so we wanted to really take a look at what districts are doing to act on that data to impact student outcomes. And so what we heard back from districts is that many of them are using the data to establish their community priorities in their strategic planning as item that can be measured and create some measurable data that way, that they're using it to justify the allocations of resources in their MyKit plans, school improvement plans, and also to drive professional development decisions and where those resources should go on that end. So I think it's really important that this presentation provides an overview of where the state sits on many of these issues, but you really want to see where you individually as a district sit within that context and use that information to drive what your next steps might be, and where you need to direct your efforts. So these are just some of the various ways districts have expressed to us their use of the data, and hopefully this might create some ideas of where you can gain momentum from there. And finally, we really want to be responsive to your needs as you administer the survey to the 3 different groups. And so we always ask in a follow-up survey, what we can do to make this survey better meet your needs. And over time, your responses have really shaped what adaptations we've made to the survey, including adding the parent guardian translations, adding the parent and guardian, the parent educator surveys. This year we split the leadership domain up into two different parts, and that was a request from districts, and the anchor reports and the domain customizations have been things that have been expressed as a need that we've been able to accommodate. So in order for us to continue to meet your needs and make this survey as powerful as possible, we encourage you to add your reflections and your needs in the survey that will be sent out to you next week. In which we solicit that feedback so that we can immediately begin to take action to craft the surveys for our 26-27 administration.
All right, thank you, Dr. Fee. So in closing, I just want to add a couple of things. If you have questions, you see our team members' email addresses there. Please contact them at any time. They will gladly answer any questions that you may have. You can also go to our website, mystudentvoice.org, which has a tremendous amount of information there that can help you out. As it relates to the funding piece, one thing that I would like to share is we're in a much better place going into next year than we were last year. Last year, we did not receive any funding for My Student Voice, and as a result, we had to reduce staff. We had a PR firm with which we worked last time. We were unable to work with them. And just dipping by about 10 or so school districts was pretty significant, considering that we didn't have the resources that we had a year ago. So I'm happy to share that we have bipartisan support for the upcoming budget pertaining to the survey. We are hopeful to add it into 31N, which historically has been used for dropout recovery programs, at-risk students, and expectations aligned to enrollment and completion. We're hoping to add some language in that section that allows for $500,000 to be used by an ISD in support of a statewide survey. So that's one option for us. If we're unable to get 31N funding, then we will go to 99X funding. That's one-time appropriation funding. We would like to stay away from that funding because that's something for which we would have to ask every single year, and we would rather have it in 31N so it's a little more consistent. The philanthropic community has also stepped up and is very receptive to helping us out for the upcoming school year. So we're in much better shape than we were last year, and we're hopeful that we will see an increase in the survey administration. But also, it's not just about giving the survey, it's about providing some supports. And unfortunately, when we don't have a lot of staff support, we cannot provide those supports statewide. In closing, I would like to thank our team, so Dr. Jenny Fee, Dr. Davey Storr, Jen Rotash, for this phenomenal work. The results are now on our website and are ADA compliant, so that will save all of you a step. And at this time, if you have any questions, we'll open it up for questions. If not, please contact any of our colleagues that I referenced. Thank you.